If it hadn't been Devon's birthday, I'd never have walked into a place like this. The bar wasn't just fancy. It was the kind of place where even the air smelled expensive. Polished wood, aged whiskey, a faint trace of cologne clinging to the velvet seats. Golden chandeliers glittered overhead, spilling warm light across marble floors. Every man and woman here looked like they belonged in glossy magazines, dressed in tailored suits and silk dresses that probably cost more than my rent. Meanwhile, I was in my best casual but not too casual outfit. Clean jeans, leather jacket, white shirt. Decent enough for our usual haunts, but here? I might as well have been wearing a neon sign that said doesn't belong. Devon, of course, was thriving. He leaned back in our booth, birthday crown slightly askew from the restaurant next door, grinning like the entire hotel was his personal kingdom. Not bad, huh? He said, raising his glass. If I'm going to turn 25, might as well do it somewhere with chandeliers. Chandeliers and cocktails that cost half our rent, I muttered, swirling the ice in my glass. Devon ignored me. He was scanning the bar like a hunter, eyes glittering with mischief. And then suddenly he stilled. His grin sharpened. Oh, my God. I froze. What? Devon jerked his chin toward the counter. That right there is fate. I followed his gaze, and almost spit my drink. A man sat alone at the far end of the bar, and he looked like he'd stepped out of a high-end fashion spread. Tall, broad shoulders under a tailored blazer that fit him too perfectly to be off the rack. Dark hair, slicked back but with just enough disarray to keep it from looking stiff. His profile was all sharp lines, jaw, nose, cheekbones. And even from across the room, I could see the weight he carried in his stillness. He wasn't just sitting. He was owning the space. I tore my eyes away before he could catch me staring. Nope. Absolutely not. Devon's grin widened. That's Luca Romano. Who? Devon gaped at me. Brian. He owns this place. CEO of Romano Holdings. His face is literally in every business magazine ever. Billionaire. Powerhouse. The whole mysterious rich guy package. Sounds boring, I lied, my pulse hammering in my ears. Devon leaned in, eyes dancing with evil glee. Go flirt with him. I nearly choked. Excuse me? You heard me. Birthday dare. He raised his glass like a toast. 5 minutes. Go charm Mr. CEO. Dev, that man looks like he eats people for breakfast. Then consider yourself the main course. Devon's smirk was wicked. Go on. Unless you're scared. I groaned. Scared? No. Sane. Yes. Chicken out and you're buying all my drinks tonight. He wiggled his brows. And I planned to get very drunk. I glared at him, but I knew it was useless. Devon had me cornered. He knew I never backed down from a dare. Not when we were kids, not in college, and definitely not now. My pride wouldn't let me. 5 minutes. I asked, giving him one last chance to backpedal. 5 minutes. Devon clinked his glass against mine. Good luck, champ. I downed the rest of my drink for courage, slid out of the booth, and crossed the bar before I could think too hard. Luca, God, even his name sounded like trouble, sat with his elbow on the counter, nursing a glass of amber liquor. He hadn't noticed me yet. Good, because my heart was already racing like I'd just signed up for a death match. I slid onto the empty stool beside him, trying to look casual. Rough night, I said, forcing a smirk. Or do you just like brooding in luxury hotels? Slowly, Luca turned his head. And I swear, my brain short-circuited. His eyes were a stormy gray, sharp and assessing, pinning me in place like he was dissecting every part of me at once. Not cruel, just steady, dangerous in their calm. My smirk wobbled, but I held it. Depends, he said finally, voice smooth, deep, the kind that made the hair at the back of my neck stand on end. Are you always this forward with strangers? I leaned on the bar, feigning nonchalance. Only the handsome ones. For a beat, nothing. Then, just barely, his lips twitched. The tiniest flicker of amusement. And what happens? Luca asked, swirling his drink lazily. When the handsome ones aren't interested? I bit back a laugh, adrenaline buzzing in my veins. Then I'd say they're lying. Nobody looks that good in a blazer without wanting attention. His gaze lingered on me. Heavy. Measuring. And then he chuckled, low and quiet, like I'd surprised him. Careful, he murmured, leaning closer. Keep tempting me, and you might end up in over your head. My stomach flipped. Warning or not, I wasn't backing down. Not tonight. Not with Devon watching like a hawk from across the room. Good thing I can swim, I shot back. That earned me a real laugh this time, soft, warm, and far too dangerous. I grinned, heart hammering. For better or worse, I'd just stepped into a game. And I wasn't sure I knew the rules. The plan was simple. 5 minutes of harmless flirting, make Devin laugh, then retreat before I embarrassed myself. Easy. Except nothing about Luca Romano was easy. Sitting this close, I realized he wasn't just handsome. He was magnetic. Every move he made was deliberate, unhurried. He didn't need to raise his voice or puff his chest. His stillness alone commanded attention. He had that air of someone used to getting what he wanted without ever asking. And God help me, I couldn't stop staring. So, I said, trying to sound casual instead of terrified, "What's a guy like you doing drinking alone? Don't billionaires usually have entourages?" He tilted his glass, swirling the amber liquid, before glancing at me. "Maybe I prefer solitude. Or maybe you scared them all away." I shot back, lips twitching. One brow arched. "Do I strike you as frightening?" "Yes," I answered honestly, but in an expensive cologne, tailored blazer kind of way. For the first time, the corner of his mouth curved, not a full smile, but something close. And it was devastating. "Expensive cologne," he echoed, amused. "Don't pretend you don't know it." I leaned in just a little, enough to match his calm stare with my own. "The whole mysterious, broody CEO thing? It's practically weaponized." Luca studied me for a long moment. His gaze didn't waver, didn't dart away shyly the way most people's did when caught staring too long. No, he looked at me like he was reading a book he'd already memorized, patient and thorough. My pulse drummed against my throat. "Dangerous," he murmured again, as if confirming something to himself. I forced a grin, refusing to let him see how much he rattled me. "What's dangerous is wasting good liquor on brooding. Lucky for you, I showed up to keep you entertained. And how exactly do you plan to do that?" His voice was low, unhurried, like he already knew I didn't have an answer. Panic flared for half a second. Then impulse. I tilted my head, smirked, and said, "Depends. Are you the type to be entertained by conversation? Or by a dare?" His eyes sharpened, interest flickering there. "A dare." Behind us, I could practically feel Devin's stare burning holes in my back. I didn't have to turn around to know he was grinning like the devil, silently urging me to go further. "Yeah," I said, heart racing but voice steady. "You give me a dare, I'll take it. Fair trade for crashing your solitude." He leaned in, just slightly, but close enough that the space between us shrank, close enough that I caught the faint scent of his cologne. Clean. Warm. Dangerous, just like him. "You might regret offering that," Luca said softly. I swallowed, forcing my smirk to stay. "Try me." For a long beat, he didn't answer. The bar buzzed around us, glasses clinking, laughter, the faint hum of jazz. But between Luca and me, there was nothing but silence. A heavy, charged silence that had me holding my breath. Then, finally, he said, "Kiss me." My brain short-circuited. What? "You said a dare," he reminded me smoothly, as if asking a stranger for a kiss was the most natural thing in the world. "So, kiss me." My throat went dry. Devin was going to lose his mind if I did this. Hell, I might lose mine. But Luca's gaze never wavered. Calm. Waiting. Testing. And me? I wasn't about to back down. Not now. I leaned in, just close enough for our lips to brush, light, quick, teasing. Electricity shot down my spine. When I pulled back, Luca's expression hadn't changed much, except for that slight curl at his lips. "Not bad," he murmured. "But I expected more." "Cocky bastard." I smirked, leaning in again, this time pressing my mouth firmly against his, heat sparking in my chest. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a challenge. When I pulled away, breathless but grinning, I whispered, "Better?" Luca chuckled low, the sound curling around me like smoke. "Much." I'd meant for it to be quick, a brush of lips, just enough to win the dare and strut back to Devin with my pride intact. But then Luca asked for more. And like an idiot, I gave it to him. The second kiss was firmer, deliberate, his cologne wrapping around me while his mouth lingered just enough to leave me dizzy. When I pulled away, my pulse was hammering so loudly I was sure half the bar could hear it. I expected him to smirk, maybe throw a smug line my way, and then let me slink off with what was left of my dignity. But Luca just looked at me with that calm, storm-gray gaze. Not smug, not flustered, just interested. And that was far worse. "So," I blurted, fighting to sound casual even though my face was burning. "That meet your expectations, Mr. Billionaire?" His lips curved slightly. "Not quite, but you're getting there. Cocky. Infuriating. Gorgeous." I opened my mouth to snap back, but then his gaze dropped to my lips again. The air between us shifted, thickened, until I had to grip the bar to ground myself. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. And suddenly, sitting here wasn't enough. Lucas set his glass down slowly, like he'd made a decision. Then he turned to me fully, voice low enough that only I could hear. "Do you want to get out of here?" The words hit me like a shot of whiskey straight to the veins. I froze. My brain scrambled for excuses. Devon's birthday, bad idea, stranger danger 101. But my mouth betrayed me before I could stop it. "Yeah." Luca's lips twitched again, as though he'd expected nothing less. He slid off the stool in one fluid movement, towering over me in a way that sent another shiver down my spine. Without another word, he reached for his wallet, placed a crisp bill on the counter, and glanced down at me. "Come on." And just like that, I was following him. I didn't look back at Devon. I didn't dare. I knew if I did, I'd see his jaw on the floor and his phone already out to take a picture of me trailing after Luca Romano like some reckless idiot. But I couldn't stop. The crowd seemed to part for him as he walked, his long strides purposeful, confident. I trailed half a step behind, feeling like I'd been caught in his gravity, powerless to break free. We stepped out of the bar into the luxury hotel's marble lobby. The chandeliers glowed above us, polished floors reflecting golden light. People moved around, businessmen in suits, couples dressed to the nines. But all I saw was Luca, glancing back just enough to make sure I was keeping up. I swallowed hard, forcing a smirk I didn't quite feel. "You always pick up strangers this easily?" He didn't slow down. "Only the ones who dare to kiss me first." I almost tripped over my own feet. That doesn't count, that was a bet." He finally stopped at the elevator, turning to face me. His gaze pinned me again, steady and unreadable. "And yet here you are." The elevator dinged. The doors slid open. Luca stepped inside, then held out a hand, not to touch me, just an unspoken invitation. My chest tightened. My brain screamed at me to think, to turn back, to remember that this was insane. But my feet moved anyway. I stepped into the elevator. And when the doors slid shut behind us, sealing us into that small, quiet space together, the air between us snapped tight with tension. 5 minutes. That had been the dare. So why did it feel like I'd just stepped into something I couldn't walk away from? The elevator ride blurred into the hallway, into the room, into a night I wasn't supposed to have. It was reckless. Stupid. But once Luca's lips were on mine, all the reasons not to melted away. His mouth was firm, unhurried, coaxing instead of demanding, and yet I felt like I was losing pieces of myself with every kiss. Somewhere between laughter and silence, between his jacket hitting the chair and my heartbeat hammering in my throat, I stopped caring about dares, about Devon, about anything except the man in front of me. For once, I didn't think. I just let myself get pulled under. When morning came, reality hit like a bucket of ice water. Sunlight spilled across the suite, the expensive curtains glowing gold. The air smelled faintly of Luca's cologne, warm and clean, clinging to my clothes scattered on the floor. And there he was, Luca Romano, billionaire, CEO, mystery man from the bar, asleep beside me. He looked different like this, softer, almost peaceful, with the hard edges of his expression smoothed away. No storm gray eyes dissecting me, no aura of command. Just a man quiet and still. My chest tightened, and that scared the hell out of me. Because this wasn't supposed to matter. It was a dare. A one-night thing. A story to laugh about later. Not this. Not me lying here, staring at him like some hopeless idiot. I couldn't stay. Careful not to wake him, I slipped out of bed. My clothes went on in a frantic blur, shirt backward fixed, jacket over my arm. I glanced once more at him, sprawled across the sheets, his breathing steady. Then I left. No note. No goodbye. Nothing. The door clicked softly shut behind me, and with it, I sealed away every stupid flutter in my chest. Work was supposed to fix me. I threw myself into my routine, coffee, Subway, emails, but my brain wouldn't shut up. Devon's smug grin haunted me. The memory of Luca's hand at the small of my back haunted me more. "Brian, my supervisor called as soon as I walked into the office. Don't get too comfortable. Big meeting today." I groaned. "It's Monday. Can't I at least finish my coffee?" "New owner's coming in," she said briskly, tapping her clipboard. "First board introduction. 11 sharp. Don't be late. New owner. Great." Another suit to remind me I was at the bottom rung of the ladder. By 11, The boardroom buzzed with chatter. Everyone speculated about the mysterious buyer. Rumors of mergers, takeovers, power plays. I just wanted it to be quick. Then the door opened, and in walked Luca Romano. My stomach dropped. He looked nothing like the man I'd left tangled in sheets hours ago. Today he was every inch the CEO, dark-tailored suit, cool composure, storm-gray eyes sweeping the room with quiet authority. His gaze landed on me, and for one charged second, I forgot how to breathe. Because I wasn't just looking at the new owner. I was looking at the man I'd kissed, the man I'd touched, the man I'd run from. And now he was my boss. The boardroom was too bright. The lights glared off the polished table, off the glass walls, off every single nervous face seated around me. I could barely breathe, my throat dry, my hands clammy against the notepad I hadn't written a single coherent thing on. And then the door opened. Every conversation cut off at once. The air shifted. He walked in. Luca Romano. The man from last night. The man I'd kissed until my head spun. The man whose laugh I'd swallowed, whose shirt I'd tugged on like I owned him. The man I'd left sleeping without so much as a note. Now he stood at the head of the table, sharp dark suit hugging his shoulders like it had been sewn onto him, watch glinting under the light. His expression was unreadable, professional, cool in a way that made my stomach twist harder. If he recognized me, he didn't show it. Not openly. Not yet. "Good morning," Luca said, voice smooth, deep, carrying easily across the room. "Thank you all for being here. I know the transition has been sudden, but I assure you, Romano Holdings has a clear vision for this company." I tried to look anywhere but him. At my pen, at my shoes, at the water pitcher sweating on the tray nearby. Anywhere that wasn't the man I'd had my hands all over hours ago. But then I felt it. That gaze. Sliding across the table, steady and deliberate, until it found me. My lungs stuttered. I hunched lower over my notepad, as if doodling crooked little boxes could make me disappear. Don't look at him. Don't. But my traitor eyes flicked up for half a second. And there he was, meeting my gaze like it was the easiest thing in the world. Calm. Collected. His eyes sharp but unreadable, like he was dissecting me without breaking stride. Heat shot straight to my ears. I snapped my gaze back down, scribbling harder, like I was suddenly reinventing the alphabet. Luca kept talking. Perfectly professional. Outlining numbers, strategy, growth potential. His voice didn't waver, not once. But every so often, when I dared glance up, those eyes were there again. Not lingering long enough to draw suspicion, but just enough to make sure I knew. He remembered. And worse, he wasn't going to let me forget. I shifted in my seat, heart hammering so loud I was sure the entire board could hear it. Then, halfway through a sentence, Luca paused. Only for a breath, but I felt it. His gaze pinned me again. And this time, subtle, fleeting, his lips curved. Not a polite smile. Not a CEO's charm. Something smaller. Sharper. Private. For me. My stomach plummeted. I'd left him last night thinking I'd gotten away with it. But now, sitting in this boardroom, with his power radiating through every inch of space, I knew the truth. I hadn't escaped him at all. The meeting ended with the scrape of chairs and the shuffle of papers. Executives leaned across the table, murmuring about budgets, restructuring, mergers. All I heard was the thunder in my chest. I stood quickly, clutching my notepad like it was a shield. If I moved fast enough, maybe I could make it out before. "Brian." His voice stopped me cold. Not loud. Not commanding. Just a single word, spoken like a fact. Like gravity. Slowly, I turned. Lucas stood at the head of the table, watching me with that same unreadable calm. The other board members filed out, too busy gossiping to notice how his gaze hadn't shifted once. "Yes, sir?" My voice cracked on the last word, betraying me. The faintest flicker of amusement touched his mouth. "Stay a moment." My pulse jumped. I nodded stiffly, forcing my expression blank, and sank back into the chair nearest me. One by one, the others left until it was just us. The silence pressed down heavy, broken only by the click of the door shutting. Then it was just him. And me. And the ghost of last night still burning on my lips. Luca moved slowly, deliberately, circling the table until he stopped across from me. He didn't sit. He just leaned on the polished wood, hands braced, gaze fixed on mine. "So," he said at last, voice low, smooth. "Imagine my surprise." I swallowed hard. "I didn't know. That I'm your new boss?" His brows lifted slightly. "Or that sneaking out would come back to haunt you?" Heat rushed up my neck. I forced myself to meet his eyes, even as every nerve screamed to look away. I wasn't, I started. Then stopped. Tried again. It was a mistake. That's all. Something flickered in his gaze, sharp and quick, like a knife catching light. A mistake, he repeated softly. The word hung there, too heavy, too dangerous. He straightened, sliding his hands into his pockets, expression smoothing into something unreadable again. But his eyes stayed locked on mine, a challenge, a warning, a promise all in one. You'll find, Luca murmured, that I don't let mistakes go so easily. My breath caught, and then he turned, just like that, and walked toward the door. He didn't look back, didn't slow, didn't give me a chance to reply. The door shut behind him, leaving me alone in the boardroom, heart hammering, skin burning, head spinning with one terrifying, exhilarating thought. I wasn't done with Luca Romano, and he sure as hell wasn't done with me. The week that followed felt like torture. Not because Luca Romano was a bad boss. Oh no, he was almost too good. Efficient, sharp, the kind of leader who walked into a room and everyone sat straighter. But it was the little things. The moments only I noticed. The way his gaze lingered half a second longer when I spoke. The way his lips curved when I pushed back against his orders instead of nodding like everyone else. The way the air seemed to shift, electric, whenever we ended up alone in the same space. It was a game neither of us admitted to playing. Brian, Luca said one afternoon, leaning over my desk with a file in hand. Too close, way too close. His cologne curled around me, maddening. You missed a figure here. I glanced at the spreadsheet, jaw tight. I didn't miss it. I was testing if you'd notice. His brows lifted. Then that infuriating little smile ghosted across his lips. Careful, he murmured, voice pitched for only me. One of these days you'll push too far. My pulse jumped, but I refused to look away. Maybe that's the point. The silence stretched. His eyes darkened. And for one terrifying, thrilling second, I thought he might actually. The door swung open. Luca, a woman's voice bright, too sweet. Darling, there you are. I jerked back in my chair as she swept in like she owned the place. Tall, elegant, with perfect hair and an even more perfect diamond glittering on her hand. She crossed the room and pressed a kiss to Luca's cheek, like it was the most natural thing in the world. My stomach dropped. I've been waiting downstairs, she pouted lightly, slipping her hand through his arm. You didn't tell me the meeting would run this long. Luca's expression didn't change. Calm. Controlled. But I saw the flicker in his eyes as they cut toward me, just for a second. Brian, he said smoothly, his voice unreadable. This is Alessia. My fiancée. The word hit me like a slap. Fiancé. The ground tilted beneath me. My throat burned, but I managed a polite nod, my voice rough when I said, Pleasure to meet you. Alessia's eyes lingered on me just a little too long. Sharp. Assessing. And the faint curl of her lips told me she didn't like what she saw. I didn't realize you had such interesting staff, she said lightly, though the edge in her tone was anything but light. I clenched my jaw, forcing a polite smile while Luca's gaze stayed locked on me, steady and unreadable. Push. Pull. Tension snapping tighter with every heartbeat. And now, with a fiancé standing between us, everything had just gotten a hell of a lot more complicated. The rest of the afternoon dragged like broken glass under my skin. I couldn't focus, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Every time I saw Alessia's perfect smile, the diamond flashing on her finger, my chest tightened until I thought I'd snap. By the time the office emptied for the night, my restraint had worn thin. Luca was still in his office, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, eyes scanning documents like he hadn't just detonated my sanity hours ago. I didn't knock. I just pushed the door open, heart hammering, words spilling before I could stop them. Why? His head lifted slowly. Calm, unreadable. Excuse me? Don't play dumb. I shut the door behind me, heat burning through my veins. Why would you? I choked on the words, fists tightening. Why would you sleep with me if you already had a fiancé? The silence that followed was suffocating. My chest heaved, my eyes stung, but I didn't look away. For the first time, Luca's composure cracked. Not much, just a flicker in his gaze, a faint tightening at the corner of his mouth. Finally, he stood, stepping around the desk, closing the space between us. Every move was slow, deliberate, like I was a wild animal he couldn't risk spooking. Because, he said quietly, eyes locked on mine, with you it wasn't business. My breath caught. Luca stopped close enough that his presence swallowed me whole, his voice low, rougher now. Alessia is a contract. A merger in a dress. Nothing more. But you His gaze dropped briefly to my lips before returning to my eyes, sharp and unflinching. You were real. The words hit harder than I wanted them to. My anger wavered, tangled up with something dangerous and impossible to ignore. I should have walked out. I should have told him I wasn't interested in being anyone's mistake. But instead, I stood frozen, my heart screaming, my body leaning too close, my voice breaking when I whispered. Then what the hell am I supposed to do with that? Luca's lips curved, not quite a smile. More like a warning. More like a promise. Figure it out, he murmured. I should have walked out of his office. Should have let his smooth words roll off me, let the burn in my chest fade on its own. But instead I stayed. Because every time I tried to tell myself I hated him for it, for kissing me, for making me feel things I shouldn't, for having a fiancé waiting in the wings, my traitor heart pulled me right back into his orbit. And Luca knew it. He leaned against the edge of his desk, sleeves rolled to his elbows, calm like the storm in my chest wasn't ripping me apart. You think everything is that simple? He asked, his voice low, steady. That a ring on her finger means anything? Doesn't it? I snapped, fists curling tight. You're engaged. What happened, shouldn't have happened. Silence. Then Luca's eyes softened in a way that made my pulse stutter. You're right. It shouldn't have. The words hurt more than I expected, sharp and heavy, like they were meant to end it. But then he straightened, stepping closer, gaze locking onto mine until I couldn't breathe. And yet, his voice dipped, rougher now. It did, because I couldn't stop it. My chest tightened. I tried to glare, but my voice cracked. You're saying that like it means something. It does. Something in the way he said it, the weight, the certainty, made my stomach twist. My throat went dry. Brian, he said slowly, carefully, like he was laying down truth brick by brick. I've been in love with someone for a while now. Someone who makes me lose the control I've lived my entire life by. My breath hitched. Anger flared hot, fueled by fear. Who? He hesitated, just for a heartbeat. Then his jaw tightened, and his gaze sharpened like a blade. You. The word shattered the air between us. I froze. My heart lurched, crashing into my ribs, my thoughts scattering like glass. Me. Luca stepped closer, close enough that the heat of him sank into my skin, close enough that I had nowhere to run. You seduced me, Brian. And now, his hand brushed mine, deliberate, sparking down my arm. Now you have to take responsibility. Because I'm not letting you go. The room tilted, my knees threatening to give way. This was insane. Wrong. Impossible. And yet, as his eyes burned into mine, steady, unshakable, I realized the most terrifying part wasn't his confession. It was how much I wanted to believe him. The days after Luca's confession blurred together, each one heavier than the last. I tried to keep my head down, tried to remind myself that nothing could happen between us. Not with Alessia in the picture. Not with the weight of an engagement that tied two powerful companies together. But Luca didn't make it easy. He never did. Every glance across the office. Every brush of his hand against mine when no one was looking. Every low murmur of my name when he caught me alone in the hall. I was drowning. And then came the gala. Romano Holdings was celebrating the merger, champagne flowing, cameras flashing, the elite of the city gathered in glittering gowns and sharp suits. I stood in the corner, half hidden, clutching a glass I didn't drink from. Across the room, Alessia glittered on Luca's arm, flawless and radiant, her diamond catching every flash of the photographer's lights. She laughed too loudly, leaned too close, her gaze flicking toward me every now and then with a glint I didn't trust. I told myself I could handle it, that I'd walk away after tonight, cut myself free before I got in any deeper. But then the host tapped the mic, calling Luca forward. Ladies and gentlemen, our new CEO, Luca Romano, and his lovely fiancée, Alessia. Applause thundered. Alessia beamed, tugging Luca toward the stage. Cameras clicked wildly, champagne flutes clinked. I couldn't breathe. But then Luca did something no one expected. He stopped. Right there, in front of everyone, he gently uncurled Alessia's hand from his arm. She blinked at him, confusion flashing across her perfect face. The room went quiet, tension rippling through the crowd. And then Luca turned, not to the cameras, not to the shareholders. To me. Before we continue, his voice rang out, deep and steady. There's something I need to make clear. The silence was electric. All eyes followed his gaze. Followed him. Straight to where I stood frozen, glass trembling in my hand. I will not be marrying Alessia, Luca said. His tone was sharp, final, leaving no room for argument. Gasps swept the room, reporters scrambling. Alessia's face crumpled, her perfect smile shattering. And the reason, Luca continued, his eyes locked on mine, is simple. My heart slammed against my ribs. He stepped forward, every inch of him calm, unshakable, commanding the room as if he'd planned this from the beginning. Because the person I love isn't her. The crowd erupted, whispers, exclamations, confusion, but all I could hear was the roaring in my ears. All I could see was him, cutting through the noise like a blade. Then, in front of everyone, he closed the distance, stopping right in front of me. His gaze softened, but his voice carried, leaving no doubt. "It's you, Brian." The world stopped. Cameras flashed like fireworks. Alessia hissed his name in disbelief, and my breath caught like I'd been punched. But Luca didn't flinch, didn't waver. "You seduced me," he said softly enough for only me to hear, though I felt the weight of the entire room watching. His hand brushed mine, firm and grounding. "You worked my world underscore, and I meant it when I told you I'm not letting you go." And just like that, under 1,000 eyes, he claimed me.